Please welcome a lady who has a long history going back to World War II, Masako Kimura-Streling.
Thank you very much for having us here. It's great to be back this year. I think everyone should have someone like a Masako in their life. I was asked actually by Masako to help her write a foreword to her book called I Thought the Sun Was God. What's fascinating about Masako is she is one of the last surviving descendants of the Satsuma Samurai. But more importantly, she's been a tremendous friend and an amazing inspiration to me through the last 7 years, as you'll see in a minute, as we talk a little bit about her life and how perseverance in the unending quest for knowledge helped her achieve anything. Thank you for coming, Masako.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It is my privilege and honor to be here.
We're just waiting for a slide. Here we go. Okay, wonderful. So Masako, if you could, just tell us a little bit about this slide above us in kanji.
Masako, あんたはね、木村家の子孫ですよ。あんたにできないことは何にもないです。Those are my mother's words in Japanese, translated in English. You are Kimura. There's nothing you cannot do. They are permanently etched in my memory, translated in English. Masako, you are Kimura. There's nothing you cannot do. In finding your own voice, I ask you to remember my mother's word. There's nothing you cannot do. I am proof of this. My name is Masako Kimura-Streling. I am a descendant of the last Satsuma Samurai Clan, a rebel army led by Saigo Takamori. He is known as the last true samurai.
I'm just curious, has anyone here seen the film The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise? Excellent. Her grandfather's grandfather was actually in that battle. Now, the samurais were warriors who lived and died by the sword. They lived practicing undying loyalty to their servants, the shogun, and their family. This was the samurai way of life.
And this discipline of samurai spirit runs through my blood and flesh and my blood. By a twist of my fate, my grandfather's grandfather was exiled with his wife and children to Ryukyu, today's Okinawa. This historical event marked the end of samurai and the beginning of Meiji, Imperial Japan, and reduced the samurai class to peasant, as Saigo predicted it. This is how sixth generation of my family, Kimura Satsuma Samurai, got to Okinawa. I was born in 1931 and raised on the beautiful small island of Okinawa, Ishigaki. If you look at the map, it is located at the last part of the Japanese islands. There I was born the second child and the first daughter of my parents, named Masako. I found my voice because I believe I was given two gifts: a strong will to persevere and strong desire for knowledge.
Now, it's important to understand that Okinawa endured many layers of prejudice and discrimination by their own people. During the war, Tokyo gave little thought to the civil economy on distant Okinawa and did virtually nothing to prepare the Okinawans for the upcoming invasion of the Allied forces. Ultimately, this is true, Okinawa was destroyed, yes?
Yes, we suffered prejudice and lack of resources.
Another thing that's really important to understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Masako, sexism was accepted as public policy in Japan during that time. Men were considered superior and women were considered inferior.
Sexism was also taught in school. When we entered the first grade, we were told not to speak to boy students. Boys could not speak to the girls. Boys are seated at one side of a classroom, and the girls are seated on another. To both my grandfather and my teacher, I was born a girl. Asking questions was discouraged. Only the boys were encouraged to ask questions. Because of it, my voice was muffled at this early stage of my life.
Now, in 1931, Imperial Japan was moving toward an invasion of Southeast Asia, all the way down to Australia. All of the country's money, manpower, and resources were spent to meet that end, yet its own citizens were left starving, living with only the smallest rations of food, correct?
Correct. I did not have 3 meals a day until World War II ended. During the last part of World War II, my father led one of the refugee groups from Okinawa to Taiwan. The refugees were to live in temples, school, any public facilities where they housed the people. We lived in one of the temples with the other refugees, and the sanitary condition was so horrible. We didn't have any money. I became very sick with the hepatitis. I remember my father was going from one house to another, selling his and my mother's to raise enough money to buy the medicine for me, but there was none. So every morning, my father and the rest of the family went to the sea or rivers to gather asari, clams, to make soup. They believed the clam soup cured the hepatitis. True or not, I survived my time in temple.
Now, at one point, Masako, her family was so destitute that they were forced to live in a house of prostitution, or otherwise known as a brothel. This is true? Could
True.
you talk just a little bit about
True. Later in my adult life, my mother told us the story about that rich Taiwanese woman and how we got to rent apartment from her. No Taiwanese would rent a place for Japanese because Japanese treated them horribly. So eventually, my father found the owner of a brothel, and who found in her heart to rent a place to our family of 9.
On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced the defeat of Japan to the Allied forces. Hirohito renounced his divine authority over Japan and stepped down from power. The war was over.
I was 17 years old after the war. As the eldest daughter of my parents, it was my duty to help my parents raise their 9 children. My circumstances dictated that I was forced to give up my dream of going to college. Because of it, I was broken, mad, and even cursing my birth, but nobody heard me. I forfeit my education to serve my parents for 32 years.
It's very important also to understand the concept of filial piety. Filial piety describes a mindset where the eldest child is expected to share the responsibility of parenting a family. If you look at the slide, you'll see one child carrying another. Masako was the eldest of 9 kids. She carried every one of her other siblings for years, and she upheld her filial responsibility. This is the center of samurai ethics, and also known as Bushido.
I upheld my filial responsibility. Then, 1952, I met my husband, an American soldier, a Kimura-Streling. I knew my grandfather would not permit me to marry an American soldier. That was considered the scandalous.
What did you do?
I did it anyway. We eloped. I came to the USA as his wife in August 1954. I followed my mother's words, Masako, you are Kimura. There's nothing you cannot do.
Soon after Masako and Carl arrived in Pontiac, Michigan, you enrolled and took a course in English. When you finished, I understand you looked for a job as a clerk typist, but after searching and searching, she couldn't find a job. So eventually, what was your first job in America?
A Ted's drive-in restaurant.
So what did you do working at Ted's drive-in restaurant?
Well, my job was to make strawberry shake, floats, and banana split. But one day, one of the waitresses told me she was quitting because she was pregnant. And she said to me, you'd make a lot more money in tips waiting on a table. So I went to the Herb manager's office and asked to see if I could speak with him. When he heard me asking to fill that position the waitress is vacating, he shook his head. No, I cannot put you in a dining room.
Why couldn't you do that?
He said, because you're Japanese. I was shocked and humiliated. I took off my apron right there and quit. On my way home on the bus, and I thought, this is America. I thought the color of our skins or ethnicity should matter. When I got home, I wrote the note, short note, took it to Pontiac Press newspaper, and asked to see if I could see the editor. She listened to my story and promised it would be on the evening paper. That night, telephone didn't stop ringing. Some people told me, go home. Some called me a dirty Jap.
A dirty Jap.
Mm-hmm. But some apologized for others' ignorance, and some offered me a job. Within a few days, I took a job as a receptionist. I persevered. It was the first time in my life I felt I was able to stand up. I kept this article all these years because it is a reminder how gutsy I was, even a young immigrant as I was. 6 months after this incident, my husband and I decided to move to Chicago. Ironically, in Chicago, I suffered much discrimination from my own Japanese coworkers for 16 years. To them, I was a Japanese war bride.
Now, it's important also to understand what it meant to be considered a Japanese war bride. At the end of World War II, many Japanese women married American GIs. Some married the GIs just for money so they could help support their family. Amongst the Japanese, these women were considered prostitutes. Other women married for love, as Masako did, but it didn't matter, because if you married a GI, you were automatically labeled as a prostitute or a Japanese war bride. That's correct, Masako?
Yes, it is true, Matthew, but I persevered. One of the most difficult things I dealt with in America was loneliness. I struggled to assimilate it into American society while trying to hold on to my job. My husband traveled a lot. I missed my family back in Okinawa. At this time, I asked myself many philosophical questions. I was a searcher, as we all are, at some point of our lives when we try to find our own voice.
So ultimately, Masako, how did you find your voice?
My strong desire for knowledge led me to study theology. I wanted to know the truth. The Satsuma Samurai practiced Buddhism in America. I became more interested in Catholicism. I eventually retired from Japan Airlines and put myself through university with help of my husband. I earned the Master's of Pastoral Studies from Loyola University Chicago. I was 62 years old.
So at 62 years old, what did you do next?
Well, I eventually became a lay missionary for Catholic Church. They sent me and my husband to serve for one of the Japanese priestless Catholic Church in Japan, because I was bilingual and I understood both cultures. We sold our house where we built our home for almost 30 years and lived in Kainan for 3 years to complete our missionary commitment. Ironically, I was now a female lay leader of a church in the society where sexism was a normal part of my youth 60 years ago. After 3 years, we returned to America with no home to call our own at my brother's house in Los Angeles. We started to build our lives all over new again for the second time. I was 65 years old. I had a dream as growing up, either to become a lawyer or an author. But I lived in a society where sexism and discrimination ran rampant. I used my gift of perseverance, my desire for knowledge, and my mother's word, Masako. あんたはね、木村家の子孫ですよ。あんたにできないことは何にもないんです。Translated in English. Masako, you are Kimura. There's nothing you cannot do. As an adult, I have endured 6 spinal surgery from carrying my younger sisters and brothers on my back when I was fulfilling my filial duties. I have survived World War II and discrimination of being called Japanese war bride. I have survived cancer. I earned a master's degree as an adult. I have lived successful life as an immigrant in America. I am a published author, and I am 82 years old. With these two gifts of God, a strong will to persevere, strong desire for knowledge, I now know my mother's words were true. I say to you, all of you, as a descendants of the last Satsuma Samurai, go out into the world and find your voice. It's out there, in your heart, speaking to you in a whisper. Listen carefully and persevere. Embrace knowledge. Remember my mother's word, there's nothing you cannot do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.